Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you understand the true cost of college and tackle the runaway costs of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz, founders of Westface College Planning. Now, your hosts for College Smart Radio, Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz.
Many colleges are transitioning from traditional bricks and mortar toward online and hybrid learning. What are the trends towards flexible online learning, and is it a fit for you? Our guest on today's College Smart Radio program is Andy Vaughn, the President and CEO of Trident University. We'll be discussing the answers to your questions about online education. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. I'm here in the studio today with Mark Guthrie, and we'd like to welcome you to our weekly show, College Smart Radio. With private schools costing well over $60,000 a year, UC's costing $35,000, and a California State University running $25,000 a year, parents need more help than ever. And we bring you that help by sharing our expertise as college planning practitioners and by sharing the expertise of our distinguished guests who are thought leaders in the higher education arena. I'm a certified financial planner, and Mark and I are the owners of the San Carlos-based college financial planning business, Westface College Planning. We also help parents with their investments and retirement plans through Westface Financial Advisory, a registered investment advisory firm. In addition to our radio show, you can find lots of powerful information at our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have articles with up-to-date information on navigating the turbulent waters of college planning, links to our free community workshops and webinars, which teach parents and students how to efficiently pay for college. And you can sign up for our monthly e-newsletter, which is full of useful content. So let's get into today's show.
Great. Well, we have Andy Vaughn on the phone, and Andy is the Chief Executive Officer and President of Trident. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Hey, thank you very much for the invite.
Our pleasure, and I think our guests are going to learn a lot from your experience and your knowledge. Maybe you can just share with our audience a little bit some of your experiences in the higher education field, and then we'll get into some specifics once we get going.
Oh, certainly. So I've been President and CEO of Trident University for the last 8 months, but I've been at Trident University for almost 2 years and came here originally as the Chief Operations Officer and assumed the role of President last fall. But close to 20 years experience in higher ed, and the last 10 have been mostly online education experience in the higher ed sector. I've worked for both nonprofit universities and the private sector universities alike, and there's a lot of similarities there and a lot of differences. But first and foremost, if you're a mission-driven institution that is all about student success, that's the number one goal. I'm very happy to report that in the last 20 years I've had some great experiences at different universities all across the country, from San Diego to San Jose, San Francisco, Phoenix, Chicago, and Trident University is based in Orange County, California, and happy to be back in Southern California.
That's great, and that's really wonderful to have that background. We're going to definitely use your knowledge and skills not only in the online arena, what's happening now, but maybe even our first stop is just, I know you stay plugged into what's happening in higher education across the country, across all those types of institutions, and I would just be great if you could share with the audience what you're seeing in some trends in the overall higher education institutions and the various styles of institutions, and what challenges are they facing in today's environment.
A lot of challenges, especially in the last 2 years. So for the first time in a few decades, you're seeing declining enrollments across all different types of universities and colleges. And the fact is, there'll be less universities in a few years than there are today. I mean, we've already seen some of the smaller liberal arts schools just can't make it. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, you've got the Great Recession, which changed, I think, the behaviors of Americans, at least in our lifetime, that you've got really debt-sensitive population now that really doesn't want to take on a lot of student debt. And during the course of the 10 years prior to the Great Recession, you saw colleges raise their tuition double digits yearly and became quite unaffordable for many. So you've got the debt-sensitive issue, but you've also got some other things at play. In the Midwest and Northeast, you've got less 18-year-olds than we had just a few years ago. And as there's less 18-year-olds for those traditional universities and colleges, there's less freshmen available. And the third one that doesn't get a lot of play, but I think is an interesting theory, is the Great Recession from, say, late 2007 to maybe about 2010 we had almost every university and college in the country saw 20 and 30% increases in enrollment during that time, because you had a population that was unemployed at around 10% or more in some places that all flooded back to college. And even if you weren't unemployed, I think a lot of people saw certificates, extra degrees, advanced degrees as a ticket for more job security during a very turbulent time of a 3-year period in our history. And what happened is, most colleges grow at 5 or 10% a year, and that's considered fairly healthy. That 20, 30%, number one, was not sustainable. Number two, you had all that pent-up demand that normally comes out over a 7 to 10-year period all happening in 3 years. And once that was done, the improving economy, remember, higher ed is counter-cyclical. You've got things at play as the unemployment rate falls, enrollments typically decline. But this was unprecedented unemployment. And you're seeing right now enrollments declining at community colleges, state universities, and private and nonprofit universities alike that we haven't seen ever. And so there's a lot of things at play. On top of all that, you're getting a lot more regulation from the federal government side, too, that adds another layer of complexity to the headwinds of higher ed. The great universities that are mission-driven will make it through this just fine. If you're all about student success, completion rates, you're going to be just fine. But there are some challenges ahead for higher ed, and we're right in the middle of it right now.
Well, that's really insightful, and I think it's hard for parents to grasp those bigger trends, because all they've heard is information from the last 2 or 3 years as their student gets ready to go to school, and what they've heard is double-digit inflation, schools are very difficult to get into, and it just feels like this impossible mountain they've got to climb with regards to trying to get into a school and then figuring out how they're going to pay a tuition and room and board that's going up 10-15% a year. And I guess what you're saying a little bit is there might be some actual trends that'll change that outlook a bit as we move forward.
That's correct. There are certainly the Ivy League schools that aren't having these same issues, and other top-tier schools that you take your top 50 colleges, universities, and the ranking system is somewhat controversial, but let's just say that we all agree on roughly the same 50 to 100 top universities. Maybe Harvard is right up there in the top 5 as one example. They're not having these issues, and they probably never will. But really where the issues come down are the smaller liberal arts colleges that don't have a strong endowment, and they have very, very high tuition. So 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, everybody wasn't as debt adverse as they are today, and so you took out those student loans, and you paid the high tuition, and you got the job, and you got the career, and you went on. And that's no guarantee anymore. And so people are really all about value. And that's really the word I think that parents should be looking for is, what's the value in the tuition I'm paying? It's not just a blank check anymore. It's, hey, we don't want to take on a lot of student debt. So what is the value of a college degree and the college I'm going to? What can I do with that? One example in California is, and we encourage this of our students too, if you can go to community college and pay a few $100s for a class versus $1,000 or more for a class on the gen ed side, on the associate's degree level, you do that, great. Transfer that back in. Most of our students do transfer an average of about 5 different colleges and multiple units of credit into a bachelor's degree. We encourage that. Look around and see how you can save money by attending colleges or other transfer credit on the general education side at the lower division at a much cheaper tuition price and transfer that back to a 4-year university. It's a great way to get value for your degree. Remember, your degree is going to be from a university in the end for a bachelor's degree. Where you did your gen eds and transfer those back, that's not where you got your degree from. I'm sure they're great schools too, but it's just one way to look at it for how to build the best value for your college undergrad education.
It's a great way to look at it, and we often talk about that with our students when we think about cost. But even the experience can be a good one to take a look at through different organizations or institutions to get your education. Andy, let's talk a little bit about what the difference is or what's going on with the online university trends.
Well, sure. First, let me say online education is not for everyone. I think it is great for adult learners, 25 and over, generally speaking. It's not to say that there could not be successful 18 to 24-year-olds, but really what we've seen, and I'm speaking from my personal experience and some research articles I've read recently in the last few years, that actually prove that success in online education has more to do with life experience and being able to be fiercely independent and self-motivated versus incoming GPA. We see actually higher completion rates for online learners that are 25 and over, and those that have some transfer credit versus those that come in under 25-year-olds and have no transfer credit or very little transfer credit. GPA, and this is at a few different institutions I've worked for, has not always been the best indicator of success for adult online learners. Number one, they may have taken courses 10, 20, 30 years ago when they weren't as mature as they are today. And so sometimes that incoming GPA may not be the best indicator of success. What we've seen is more of a personality profile of independent learner that's self-motivated, that has life experience. They want to finish that degree. They've dabbled maybe at a few different colleges, and now they're ready to finish. The students we've seen for 100% online learning that are under 25 and have very little transfer credit, typically the majority of those don't finish, at least not at the institution they first attended for online learning. Now, there is a place for online learning for the traditional 18 to 24-year-old student. Really what we've seen success with is the blended hybrid where you take part of your course online and part on ground at the campus. That's a great way to kind of test the waters of online learning and merge into maybe an eventual online program later, maybe for a graduate degree program. But we're seeing great success in adult learners 25 and over that have transfer credit, and I think that's where you're seeing the trend of growth is adult online learning.
That's valuable information, and I know a lot of parents grapple with that because they know an online program could be more economical, but they don't want to rob their 18-year-old of the experience and the discipline of having to go to classes. So, hey, we're here with Andy Vaughn, and we're very excited to have him. He's a Chief Executive Officer and President of Trident University. We're having a great conversation about overall trends and specifically what's happening with online trends. And we're going to come back and dive into that a little bit deeper after a quick break.
College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Contact our hosts at collegesmartradio.com or call 650-587-1559. Now back to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz, and I'm here in the studio with my co-host, Mark Guthrie. We all know that college is expensive and will most likely be some of the most costly years for a family. Understanding how to navigate the college costs is a very smart thing to know. To help families be on this radio show, we host community workshops live and via webinar several times a month that explain the cost of various colleges, how the financial aid system works, and things to consider to prepare yourself for this tremendous expense. To learn more and reserve your seat, go to our website, collegesmartradio.com. If you've just joined us, we've been talking with our guest, Andy Vaughn, who's the president and CEO of Trident University, an online university. We've been talking about the trends of education and universities overall, and a little bit about online, but we haven't been able to get into too much detail about the online part of the education. You talked about the profile of the student that fits for online or that's successful in online learning, and I know that Trident has quite a commitment to the military student population. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Andy?
Certainly. We have, just over 8,000 active students and about 14,000 students total that come through Trident every year. And just over half of those students are active duty military, another 20% are veterans. And we have attracted a lot of military students for what we call compassionate commitment and academic excellence. That's kind of our two pillars here. And when I explain compassionate commitment, I'd like to give an example of what that means because our military audience, especially during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, were very susceptible to being transferred on a day, two notice, maybe a week notice overseas. And one of the things, how we demonstrate compassionate commitment to our military audience was being able to take our online courses. They might be online in the U.S., but if you go to Iraq, maybe you don't have that online connection. So this is going to sound a little dated, but we would then press our online courses to CD-ROM, so even if they had a laptop, they could still complete their course. And that's just one example of many that made us a very compassionate commitment university for that military audience. Earlier, too, I mentioned that a lot of times the 18 to 24-year-old would maybe not be the best candidate for online learning, but sometimes, based on your location, it's the only way you can learn or receive a college degree based on rural areas, and the military audience is a great example. We do find our military learners are excellent because they are independent and self-motivated, and they do actually make very, very good candidates for success and completion rates for online learning. So we've actually really embraced that. They've embraced us. It's been a good relationship in the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a fantastic opportunity, and you're right. It goes much beyond the military because there's certainly kids who are self-starters, who are very motivated, who might be very much on their own at age 18 and already accepting a lot of responsibility, and they could handle the discipline. Talk a little bit just about the mechanics of, so somebody wants to participate in an online course. What is their ability to interact with a professor real time? What's their typical interaction with presentation material that's been created and available anytime? Just how does that work? How do you kind of blend the pre-recorded portion of online education versus the live portion of it?
Most universities have online courses that include what we call a threaded discussion forum, and that's where you would have a question posed by the professor, and then discussion ensues between professor and the entire class. Let me take this moment to tell you why I believe online learning is actually better than on-site learning for this reason. In an on-site class, you could just show up and probably get a D or a C minus, meaning if you just show up and you may not participate in any discussions whatsoever, you may just kind of phone it in and be in that seat and you're there. In an online course, you can't do that. You have to actually participate and be a part of the discussion 100% of the time, which makes sure that every student in an online class is a part of that class. And it's one of many reasons I feel online learning actually has an edge on on-site learning, but it's a great example of the learning process and the learning outcomes that online learning can give you that on-site cannot. So every online course at most universities have a discussion forum, but you've also got a couple options as well. At Trident, we use a case-based learning method, and we also use more real-world examples. We call it developing your critical thinking skills. We want our graduates to make sure they can solve real-world challenges in the business world, education world, health sciences, information systems, whatever their career might be. And so we focus more on writing papers to solve challenges where you're using a case-based learning method to increase critical thinking skills. But that's not the only way. There's other universities that have the traditional tests and quizzes and online learning that's easily programmed. The foundation for all the learning is what we call a learning management system. You'll hear the term LMS mentioned a lot in online learning. The LMS, the learning management system, is the platform, we call it the online classroom or student portal. And that's where you can interact with your professor, typically through email, but phone calls are not unusual either. You can solve problems through the phone. But there's also a lot of tutoring at different universities that offer what we call whiteboard solutions, where you can go online and get online tutoring using a whiteboard where you're communicating back and forth on a real live whiteboard. I've seen that be very successful at different colleges. There's a lot of great tools that are out there that bring education to everyone, no matter what your location. That's really the beautiful thing about online education.
Sure, and the whole world of technology is about improving that experience, where there's not much you can improve with one professor in an auditorium with 300 kids sitting there listening to a lecture. But
that's right. That's one of the things you want to look at, too, when choosing an online college. Accreditation, obviously, is one of the most important things. Regional accreditation is probably the gold standard that you want to ask to make sure that a college is regionally accredited or has some sort of accreditation at the national level as well. But you just mentioned it there. I've seen some online colleges that still have 300 students in a class with different teaching assistants. You might want to consider asking a college when you're choosing one, how many students are your courses capped at? Because most I've seen in the private sector are capped at about 20 or 25, 30 students per class. And even in an online form, it makes your learning experience much richer.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about Trident then. What is your typical class size, or is it different depending on what the courses are?
We do cap most of our classes at 25. Very few have any more than 25 students per class. Our session lengths are about 12 weeks long right now for our undergrad and graduate courses. And Trident was actually founded with 3 PhD programs, and that's one of our pillars of academic excellence. So we have 3 PhD programs. We have several master's degree programs, and really it's broken down into 4 different colleges. We have the College of Information Systems, which includes computer science and information technology. We have the College of Health Sciences, which includes a PhD in health sciences, the Master of Science Health Administration, Health Sciences bachelor's degree. The College of Education has a PhD in education leadership, and then we've got a master's degree in education. And our most popular college and largest is the College of Business Administration. Our MBA program is our largest program, but also our bachelor's in business is right behind it. But we also have a PhD in business administration that's pretty popular at the PhD level as well.
No, that's a great lineup. And now talk about just the cost. So we're used to throwing around numbers about what a Cal State would cost, what a UC would cost, what a Stanford or a Harvard would cost. How do we think about a Trident cost in relation to all of that? Obviously, room and board is not a factor, but that's taken care of by wherever the person's living. But let's just talk about tuition. Are books required? Walk us through that a little bit.
This is really one of our proudest pillars. Is one of our value propositions is actually our value, and we talked about value earlier on the show today. We're very happy. Probably the best benchmark is to use an MBA because almost every university has an MBA program, so I'll just use that as an example. And our MBA, including books and everything you need for the learning experience, is under $19,000, and that's the full civilian price. And I say civilian because our military audience gets a lower tuition price based on agreement with the Department of Defense, so their tuition is slightly lower. But so an MBA at a regionally accredited university for under $19,000 is almost unheard of. You're going to find that's probably less of a price that most in-state universities offer, not all, but most. And we're very proud of that. We've kept our costs down so that we can offer that great value. We've been very, very particular about not having these huge tuition increases in the last 10 years that a lot of universities took part in. It really has kept our costs down. You'll find that same degree at most private sector universities, even online or on site, would be double and maybe 2.5 times that price. So we're very proud of that. And our students are very proud of that fact, too, that they're not going into huge amounts of debt largely when they come to school at Trident. And again, we're very proud of that because this is an environment where students and parents alike are very debt adverse, and they're trying to figure out ways to complete a college degree without going into huge amounts of debt. And we just can't be proud of the fact that that is one of our values. Sure.
Well, that's fantastic. So we mentioned before, just in passing a little bit, about there's many institutions out there that are not for profit and some that are for profit. I mean, I think people get the wrong impression when they see a school that's for-profit versus not-for-profit. Frankly, I think a for-profit school works harder in a lot of ways. But maybe just give it a little observation at a high level about how parents or individuals would think about that.
For both universities, nonprofit and for-profit or private sector, as is stated too. And I'll tell you, as long as you're mission-driven and truly care about student success, there's not a lot of difference between the two. And what people don't understand is the state university, nonprofit universities and colleges, it's not just the tuition you pay. They also get subsidized with state tax dollars. So it's not really the true cost. So if a state university says that it only costs, say, $5,000 or $10,000 per year, it's really a lot more than that because we're all paying into a system that these tax dollars also supplement the tuition dollars that are generated. The private sector or for-profit universities are all tuition-driven and do not take tax subsidies. Quite the opposite. They actually pay corporate tax rates, and so they're contributing back into the tax funds. And so that's an overlooked part. When you're really looking at the true cost of an education, you can't just look at the tuition that's paid by the students. I've worked at both nonprofit and for-profit universities in the last 20 years. There's not a lot of difference as long as you're mission-driven and truly care about completion, graduation rates, careers for your students when they graduate, and you're all about student success.
Sure, it's about the results at the end of the day.
Thank you, Andy, so much for joining us. We've come to the end of our show, but thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you bringing on your expertise to the show.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on College Smart Radio. You can hear us each week on KDOW, 1220 AM, Saturdays at 3 p.m. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. And join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.
Information presented during today's show is not to be construed as advice meeting the particular needs of any investor. All mention of performance is based on historical experience. It should not be assumed that past performance is any indication of future results. Tax Center legal advice is not offered by Mark Guthrie or Beatrice Schultz. Please consult your tax professional for additional guidance regarding tax-related matters. Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz are owners and investor advisor representatives of Westface Financial Advisory. College planning services offered through Westface College Planning. Insurance services offered through Westface Financial and Insurance Services. License number OF 35251. Financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Westface Financial Advisory.